introducing our speakers for the day.
Well, Miigwech, thank you so much, Amanda. And maybe first I'll just thank you and Campus Ministry for your wonderful leadership on this. It's one of my favorite platforms at Marquette University. But I'd also like to acknowledge Tiffany Fulford and Dia Henderson, who support cultural student organizations, and in particular the Native American Student Association. And if I might acknowledge Mr. Alex Liberato, who is in the house. He's the president of the Native American Student Association, and has been such a great lead on many initiatives here at Marquette. So thank you for that. In the audience as well, I'm not sure who's all in attendance, but I would like to acknowledge, I see Dr. Mark Powis. I would like to acknowledge members of our Council on Native American Affairs that may be with us. So Miigwech for your attendance, and of course all those in the audience hearing. If I may be so bold, I'm not especially great at sharing my screen, but I did before we begin. I'll see, now it's spinning. That's how it goes. And Des, I have all of your photos on my screen as well. So what I did want to share was a land acknowledgement before we begin, to give us that spirit and sense of place. We meet today on the traditional homelands of the Menominee, Potawatomi, and Ho-Chunk Indian nations, who have known this land as a relative for millennia and who remain our hosts on it. We also recognize the presence in Milwaukee of tribal members from 9 other Wisconsin nations, including the Oneida Nation, the Stockbridge-Munsee Community Band of Mohicans, the Brotherton Nation, and 6 Ojibwe nations, namely the Red Cliff Band, the Lakota Band, the Lac du Flambeau Band, the Red River Band, the Sakagoan Chippewa Community, and the St. Croix Chippewa Indians. We also recognize Milwaukee as home to a large and resurging urban Indian community that includes diasporic Indigenous people from around the United States and Canada, as well as from the global South, the Pacific, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Great. I will start perhaps by just framing the introductions first, and then we'll ask Destiny to begin her story. Destiny, I know you'll share a lot more, but I just want to say, if you all haven't read our promotion about this event, Destiny is, what you didn't see, she is my first cousin, our mom's sisters, and she's just adored in our family. She's an Anishinaabe interior designer based in Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's Canada. She graduated with her master's degree in interior design from the Faculty of Architecture at the University of Manitoba. She worked at a local architecture firm in Winnipeg for over 10 years as a designer before branching out and starting in 2016. It's a beautiful, scary story how she did that. Destiny started designing artisan textiles for interiors that reflect local Manitoba Indigenous peoples. She's a beautiful story on that, on where those design inspirations come from. And she's picking up where her ancestors left off, and she's doing it with such success. And also joining us today is Kelsey Otero. She is a big part of Marquette's mission to be the difference here. She's the Associate Director of Social Innovation. Her work here not only helps students build success in business and communication, but the local business community, startups, and social enterprises. Kelsey is also the co-chair of the Near West Side Partners Commercial Corridor Working Team and has been critically instrumental in attracting many new businesses to Milwaukee's Near West Side, in which Marquette is embedded. So, Destiny, Welcome to Marquette University. The Soup with Substance is usually hosted in a very special place. It was formerly known as the Alumni Memorial Union, room 157, but it has been transformed to Mamawe Abawin, or the Coming Together Room, and it hosts our tribal flags from the Great Lakes area. So wish I was breaking Bannock with you. But we're so happy to have you here. And please, we have, it's now about maybe 12:15. Please share your story. We'll have Kelsey come in on the back end to really respond to the work she's doing, you're doing, and how she's supporting students in here and connecting them to resources. So welcome, and please go right ahead.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's nice taking a little break from the chaos that is my life. So yeah, it's really very nice seeing you. So I guess I'm not really sure where to begin. I started Indigo Arrows 4 years ago now, and like I was telling Jackie on the weekend, my company has really changed year to year, and just growing, experimenting, trying to figure out a way to grow my business in a sustainable way, and also keeping in mind that I have a young family. So yeah, and I guess I can begin. Jackie told you that I graduated from U of M. I worked in a firm, and the one thing that I really struggled with was that when I was doing projects, I started creating custom furniture, and I was wrapping. I have these stools, I call them drum stools, and they're just a very simple design. It has birch tops and a birch bottom, but wrapped around the sides are wool blankets. And they became very popular with the schools that I was doing. The only thing is that I was using blankets with patterns that were mainly from the US, and there weren't any patterns that I could put on there from Manitoba. And that was because nothing existed. And so trying to figure out a way to still use those blankets. We give blankets as gifts at weddings, graduations, and so they're very important in our culture. And yeah, so it was, I guess that's kind of where it started, was trying to figure out, okay, how do I get fabrics and how do I get representation in the projects that I'm doing that's respectful and that really showcases our people here in Manitoba. And the one thing that I came across that was sort of like a life-changing thing for me was at the local museum, which was just around the corner from where I was working. A friend of mine, he's a curator there, he's an archaeologist. He's a Cree archaeologist. And sorry, my kid's art just fell down, almost hit me. This is my husband. Anyways, put that aside. Yeah, so he was showing me some pieces, and they were thousands of years old, these pottery pieces. And the stamping around the top was, I've never seen anything like that. And it was just really intricate. And he was showing me, they had like cases and cases of these things, not open to the public because it was on the 5th floor, and they were all stored in this back room. Anyways, yeah, so I got to see all these pieces, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. Like the history behind the pottery and the bone tools, and the way they were dating them. And I asked him, how many pieces do you have in your catalog that you're doing? Because they were all marked with little numbers. And he said they were cataloging over 3 million of them. And it's just like this big, I don't know, it's just crazy, that the project that they're doing there right now. And then I learned that our Manitoba, the southern Manitoba rivers, has a really amazing clay deposits. And so a lot of these pottery pieces are being discovered along the riverbanks, and they were putting together, what they were doing was they were doing community outreach, and they were recreating these pots with community members. And our pots are, long and elongated to fit into the fire. And so and then all the storage food pots, like just so beautiful. And so that's where it started for me. And that was about 2014. I started taking silkscreen printmaking classes, and I had to learn how to actually create the patterns. And so I started right from the basics. So I would take classes in the evening. Actually, that was the year. Wait, was that when we bought the house? Anyways, it was a crazy couple of years because our kids were little. But my husband was like, take these classes, do what you need to do. I told him like this was really important to me, and I wanted to create these fabrics so that I could find a way to bring them into projects. And so I took a beginner class in the fall and then an advanced class in the spring. And I started sourcing fabrics, like trying to figure out where to buy everything. And then it came to zippers and then website. And so it was about 2 years start to finish of research and just making, and then also working with my dad, letting him see the patterns, and he was so excited. My dad's fluent in Anishinaabe, and so we had lots of fun naming patterns and just just talking about collections. And so the funny thing with my dad is that he's so cute. He always has all these dreams, but I never really know about the dreams until I'm doing something, and then he'll say, I've always wanted to do that. He wanted me to be a psychologist. My first degree is actually a double major in cultural anthropology and psychology, and that's where I knew the Cree archaeologist. We took classes together a million years ago. And and then I broke the news to my dad. Sorry, Dad, I want to go into architecture. Not he got over it. But then started telling me, wow, I always wanted to be an architect. And he didn't tell me that before. So now that I'm a textile designer too, he's like, I always wanted to do stuff like this. Sure. But yeah, so we had lots of fun. We still have lots of fun. And so in 2016, I broke the news to my husband, I'm quitting my day job, and I'm going to go for it and do Indigo Arrows and really work hard on getting the word out that I'm making these textiles. And so the first textile that I was making was tea towels. And so it's, telling my husband that I want to quit my really good design job to make tea towels was kind of a crazy shock to him. But yeah, so that happened 2016. In the fall of 2016, I just did as many pop-ups as I could. In Winnipeg, we have a really great makers market. So we have a lot of mini markets all over, pop-ups. We have there's this one market, it's called Alleyways Market, and we take over a back alley, and it's full of amazing vendors, and it's super fun. And that was my first market. And it was pretty scary. A lot of the makers had these amazing booths. You're given a 10 by 10 space. And yeah, I just went for it. And I have pictures of my first booth that I still I share in presentations, and I just show from the first booth to my in going into my 4th year, how you just learn, adapt, and then just learn new ways of really marketing. Because I guess for myself as an entrepreneur, I had to wear a lot of hats, figuring out the labels, the branding, the logo, that's a whole other side of it. And then, taking photos. So I love it all though. It's fun. It's exciting. I can get my husband gets involved, my dad's there, my kids. So it's It's really like a big community kind of like a family project almost. And yeah, so I just did as many pop-ups as I could. I was silk screening all these products, and I must say it was pretty stressful. Like when you're silk screening, your hands, like you're constantly washing. And so I had to figure out a way to also, I wanted to expand my line so that I had full color. I love the silk screening part. I actually brought a piece here. These are my napkins, and then so like, you know, even just trying to figure out the branding and the wraps in the beginning, they were okay, like, but now I have a new logo, I have new branding, and yeah, so that's that. So there's your wraps. And the nice thing I like about having these things is that it also tells the story of like what inspired the pattern, and the name of the pattern. And so, oops. And so, for instance, like this one here, this is the Nisway pattern. So my patterns originally basically were very simple. They just mean 1, 2, and 3 in Anishinaabe. So my first pattern is called Beijig, and this is Beijig here. And it's from an elk antler bone scraper tool. And it was this, like a tool like maybe that big. It was in this cardboard box at the museum, just kind of stored on the 5th floor in the dark on a shelf. And I just was like so shocked at, like, I've never seen a pattern like this. And so this was carved into this elk antler bone tool. And it just, like, all these circles, and like, I don't know, it was amazing. Like someone took the time to, you know, so the scraper tool had all these markings. And so this was dated at over 400 years old. So that's Beijig. And then there's Nisway. Nisway is 3. This is my 3rd pattern. And this one here is from pottery. And so these little X patterns and dots were pushed into the, and it was like markings at the top of the pot. And this one here is the piece was dated over 3,000 years old. And there's just like so many patterns, but this one here really stood out to me. And so my patterns are very minimal, simple. I took the pattern and created this sort of repeating piece. And this is what I silk screen. So I get the piece sewn and serged, and then I take all of these pieces to my studio, and then I have a screen, and then I mix my own copper ink. So this, you can't really see it there, but it has like kind of a copper metallic shimmer. And yeah, I couldn't find any copper ink, so I mix my own color. And yeah, but when you go into the studio, the nice thing about being a maker is that my life is like always kind of busy and crazy. So when you go there, you have to slow down. You have to like take your time, because you're making something, and like you don't want to mess up. You want to, you know, just kind of get into a zone, and it's very repetitive. I don't know, something about the repetitive thing to it really like calms me down. And then you just hang them all. And so those are the pieces that I was making the first 2 years of, like, just constantly creating more product. The nice thing about, or I mean, I guess the reassuring thing was that people were buying my product. It was successful. They loved the story behind it, and it became kind of like a teaching tool whenever I'd go to pop-ups and people would talk to me, and I would explain to them, like, this is from Manitoba, like this is over 3,000 years old. And so it just kind of grew from there. 2017, I had a lot of wholesale requests, and so that's tough, because when your production is pretty small, your profit margin is not. Yeah. So when you send it out for wholesale, you're not really making a lot, but what my intent was that year was just to kind of get the word out, like, okay, Indigo Arrows is making these textiles, it's reviving pottery and bone tool patterns. So that year I did I just was constantly making, I was also doing a lot of workshops that year. I had a lot of requests to teach how to make patterns. So the museum hired me to do these monthly workshops. And the nice thing about doing it at the museum was that I was able to take the participants into where all of these things are stored. And the archaeologist was able to describe and give them a background on the history of pottery in Manitoba. And then we would go to a room, I would get them to carve blocks and make their own patterns on tote bags and whatever they wanted. And so the funny thing with, like, when I first started making my own patterns, I was always worried about making a mistake, about the patterns not being perfect. But I had to just put that aside, and you just have to like have fun and make, and then you discover things that you like. You don't really know what you like until you make. I was actually printing in like hot pink and all these things, like patterns for my daughters. And then that's when I started playing around with, I wanted copper, and that's sort of like where I came up with the copper, because I started mixing colors together. But anyways, at these workshops, the funny thing that I noticed is that adults have such a hard time making a mark in the block. Like, they're just sit there forever. I have pictures of all the students like this. And I was like, you have like 2 hours, but like you want to spend your last hour printing. And so really, like, you have an hour to carve. I would say do 10 minutes of sketching, 15 minutes of sketching, and then really start carving your block. But no, like 30 minutes in, they're still like this. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to run out of time. They're never going to get a tote bag made. And then so I would just basically, I would take a block and I would do a demonstration, and I would mark up a block and make a moon, like just a simple half moon. And then I would start stamping, and I was like, there, you got like, and you can make any kind of pattern. So I remember I went and did a workshop at a school with grade 8 students. And the funny thing with younger students is that they don't have any inhibitions. Like, I was barely done explaining how to carve a block, and they were already carving. I was like, okay, and I was like, whoa. And then people were carving. I was like, okay. But adults, they just get so worried and hung up. Anyways, that was 2017, and I don't do workshops anymore. I just don't have the time. Like, it was a lot of fun. I think maybe I'd come back to that later. 2018 was when I expanded. I learned I can get my patterns printed on linen. And that's when I started doing the full color like this, and looking at changing my product into collections. And so whereas before, like, my colorways, I was printing on a black linen, a natural linen, and a gray linen, which I still really like, because you can mix and match those pillows together and they all kind of flow together. My colorways now are still very earthy. Yeah, so that was 2018, was just, yeah, trying to do all that. Also, I still do architecture full time. And so I split my company, and I still kept Indigo Arrows and the textiles, but then I started Woven Collaborative, which is an interior design company. I have a partner. She's an Indigenous interior designer. And so we're swamped. Like, they're both really good. Really, I love doing them both. Like, I was telling Jackie that I have a mentor now who told me I need to pick one, like, and just go with it. And it's really tough. Like, I don't know. Like, I really love them both. I feel like they kind of work hand in hand too, because when I'm designing furniture, I can custom design patterns and create really interesting custom pieces. So we'll see what 2021 does. I don't know. But right now, I think the tough thing, or I guess the good problem is that I'm always sold out. And so I need to figure out the next step is how to grow the production and the collections, and then to look at it as, okay, this is the spring collection, done. Now this is the fall collection coming out, done. And just kind of evolve that way. So that's something that I kind of learned over the last few years. I also got to do, so 2020, this year, I haven't done any pop-ups due to COVID. Just haven't, yeah, there was quite a few that I was pretty excited about. Last year, 2019, in the summer, I went to Santa Fe for a pop-up. So I started expanding my reach with these pop-ups. So 2016, 2017 was all about Winnipeg. 2018, I started traveling and going to different areas to do some pop-ups, which really expanded my customer base. And I also got to meet other makers, Indigenous makers, because I'm really like, the number of Indigenous entrepreneurs at the pop-ups here in Winnipeg is very low. And they're also very, I don't know, tough to get in. They're curated to the point where it's really hard. If you don't have like a really good camera, if you don't have a good website, if you don't know how to market really take good photos of your product, there's no way to get into these markets. I remember my first market, a couple of markets I applied to, I got denied. They just said, thank you, we love your product, but not at this time. And then I got to know those women later, and I said, remember when you denied me? Oh my God. But actually that helped me grow, because then I was like, okay, there's something with my pictures, like what do I do? And again, then I had to like figure out how to, really how to style my photos. That's it. So learning how to style things and yeah, so being able to travel and meet other Indigenous entrepreneurs was really exciting. I went to Santa Fe last year, Indian market in August, and yeah, that was really fun. Amazing. There was like 750 entrepreneurs all set up on the streets. It was so amazing. And so, yeah, this year I haven't done any pop-ups. And another thing that was tough is that fabric shipments, and I mean, this is just, I don't really have lots. I don't want to complain about, the struggles I had with the COVID, but so I had less sewers just because of social distancing. And so this year was kind of like a way to really look at inventory, how I want to run things. So it's a good time to kind of step back and figure out how, where I guess my priorities would be. And yeah, and I think I didn't mention that I also, in the last 4 years, I tried different products to add, and kind of overwhelmed myself with those things. But it was good to try. Like cheese boards, I tried it. I thought, oh, good, I'm going to make these triangular. Actually, I have some here. I should have brought it. These triangular cheese boards, because I love triangles, and I wanted to like bring in this new element, and they can pair it with my napkins. And oh my God, I knew, like, you just have to know when something is not, when you can't do something. I was trying to hand paint each one, and it was so hard. Yeah, so that was done. So let go of that. So I guess the lesson learned from that is to know your limitations. And yeah, just stick to things that you love, and not try to overwhelm yourself with more. But yeah, so it's been a really busy 4 years, and I think that this past September I really like if I was to say, like, where do you see Indigo Arrows going? Where would you love to be? I would love to get like a really big studio to be able to like have fabric rolls ready to go, have assistants that come in and help like cut all this fabric. Yeah, I just see like I would love to have a bigger space. I would also love to travel internationally. Like we were going to take our kids to Paris this past September, and they have this big textile design conference. And so things like that, I would love to start attending those and, maybe setting up like once I have more. I can't really do that now because my production is still a very small batch and small um, but yeah, I would love to travel more and really get the patterns out and share the story behind the patterns. I really yeah, I enjoy talking to people, so I kind of miss the pop-ups, but it was nice to be home with my little homebody family. Everyone here likes being inside, I think, way too much. But yeah, so
Des, consider this a pop-up. We love this, but I can see how exhausting that must have been to, like, as an Indigenous voice on a business landscape that didn't have a lot of Indigenous representation. It must have been exhausting, and some of those gatekeepers you met very early on, right, that would decide your fate at that particular entry. So that you kind of just moved through it with optimism and fearlessness is amazing. I mean, I was telling Kelsey, and maybe Kelsey, you can pop in now too, but I was telling Kelsey, like, I can't even pronounce entrepreneur properly. Like, I don't know how you moved through some of those challenges and are still thinking about how to augment your brand, and tap mentors who, by the way, I'm not sure I agree with that. Your vision is very holistic. I mean, your interior design is informed by incorporating other elements. And so to me, that's such an Indigenous philosophy. And but I can imagine, I mean, Alan, your husband, Alan Grey Eyes, is an equally successful entrepreneur.
yeah.
I just want to announce that he was the 2020 Manitoba Arts Award of Distinction Award winner. And she has two young daughters that are at home. So, I mean, it's overwhelming. But so Kelsey, some of the students that might be here, or some of the students that you work with, how do you like, yeah, like, I'm a arts and sciences person. I mean, just going into business and thinking in that way is just impossible to comprehend. So
yeah, before I get to that, I just want to say thank you, Destiny. Your products and your story are amazing and authentic, and it was just truly a blessing to learn from you. And I think, one of the things I've learned, speaking of along mentorship, Jacqueline, is that we all have so much to learn from others and the way that they approached it. I think entrepreneurship is sometimes billed as a very solo field, and you have these heropreneurs that start something, but the reality is behind any one or any good idea, there is a team of people, a support network of friends, family, mentors, and that's one of the things that I pride myself on being able to try and offer to students from the 707 hub at Marquette University. We have mentors with years of experience. I mean, most our mentors have probably a combined 100 years of entrepreneurial experience, just between two of them. And I'm so impressed that, they're willing to share it with anyone that comes in. And our philosophy is that there's no bad ideas. Our job is to not give you the answers either. It's to help point people in the direction where they are trying something and learning and evolving. Some of my favorite students that I've worked with are students that don't have a business background, because we can support people and help empower them to understand financials, But I believe at the end of the day, it all starts with having, I don't even want to say a good idea, having an idea and identifying a problem that you feel really strongly with that needs to be solved. So I often tell people, think about what you are really passionate about. Think about what keeps you up at night. And if that's the case, then there's a market for you to do something and to try something. One of the words I wrote down when Destiny was talking was, in big letters, was the word try. And I think that's so, I don't think we emphasize that enough, that it doesn't mean that you need to go launch a business tomorrow. You need to think about that thing that you are passionate about, and figure out a way to express it, whether that is through starting a business or it is, by, putting out some art, or talking more about something that you feel really strongly about. A lot of students that I'm working with these days aren't starting businesses, but they're thinking about how they can be a catalyst for bringing arts and culture into their community or creating change on campus. And I think those are all entrepreneurial avenues. And we probably need to reframe some of our messaging that we use, because we think about entrepreneurs like Mark Zuckerberg or creating an app. But I think it's more about the entrepreneurial mindset, and that's something that Destiny has in her DNA, and it's that willingness to try and to collaborate and to keep working hard. And I think that's the type of work that I think Marquette, in terms of helping students to see how they can be the difference, that's a role that we can play in so many departments on campus. So you can be from arts and sciences, you can be from College of Communication, you can be a lawyer, and find an avenue or a path that makes sense for you to bring something that you are passionate about to life.
Definitely.
Well, and that you found it in, let's face it, I've worked in museums before I came into higher ed, and, pottery shards are relegated to basements in drawers, and they're documented in a really just shallow way. But that Destiny, you elevated that. The beauty I saw in those, people just called them utilitarian. They were, were they Southwestern examples? No, but they were woodland patterns that are just so resonant and that you bring out in your textiles so beautifully, but also share that story, on what these mean. So it's just awesome. They're so creative, and you talked about some of those fears, but and maybe Kelsey, you talk about this with your students too, but Des, how did you think you could succeed? How did you, was that belief instilled in you in your family history? Where did some of those roots come from?
I think so. I feel very fortunate that my parents always pushed me to just work hard. That was a big thing. Was, what does my mom say? It'll come to me later. I just had it. But yeah, my parents always pushed me to work hard. And especially in university, actually it started pretty early. And so I don't know. I think I just knew it was going to be hard work. And I knew that it was going to be long hours, and but also becoming a mom really pushed me, because it is also hard to go to a job that's 9 to 5 for me, because I'm not home with them, or if they are sick, I can't stay home. There's just all these things that I noticed when I became a mom that was really tough. And also another big thing for me was to be able to give back with my company. And there's a young girls group that I'm sending donations to. And so it's an Indigenous girls group called the Butterfly Club. And it's an after-school program that's for girls ages 9 to 13. And the reason that's so important to me is because of the fact that we still have like a number of, it's ongoing, the tragedy of murdered and missing Indigenous women in Canada and in the US, and how like you could just disappear. Like that to me just like, is so awful. And so even as a young girl, even growing up and even now, like there's no way I would go anywhere after, like I'm nervous to go anywhere after dark. And that's still like a factor in my life. And so having two young girls, I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, you you want to let them know, like, always be careful, but then you don't want them to be fearful all the time. Like, so all these things, as a mother, I think really influenced me to work hard and to really push this company and to be able to like give back to also these other like to community organizations. So I mean, like, I don't know if that says yeah, I guess, but my parents always said to work hard. Pain now, pleasure later, like something like that. Something about experience the pain now, pleasure. You know what, I have to phone my mom later. She'll tell me right away. But yeah, so it was just all that sort of.
Destiny, I just want to jump in. I'm Kelly Hedge. It's nice to know. I just want to let you know what I share with my daughters. You do what you have to do what you want to do. So it's kind of the same philosophy, what you're saying with your parents.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed listening to all of you. You are so inspiring, and your entrepreneurial spirit is just enlightening. You are luminaries. So Kelsey, nice to see you too. And I love Jacqueline, of course. But I just want to jump in and say that, because that's the same thing I tell my daughters.
And Kelly, I might thank you for joining us. She's a member of the Council on Native American Affairs as Native Hawaiian, and is such a big support for Indigenous programming at Marquette University. So miigwech for being here, Kelly. It's so lovely to see you.
I always say, Jacqueline, that entrepreneurism is a mindset, and it's a muscle that we can flex. So similar to how people work out and they build up their muscles over time, this capacity and appetite to take risks and try new things starts small. It doesn't mean that, people who are listening here on the call today are going to go become an entrepreneur tomorrow, but there's small risks that we can and probably start to take to try new things. And then it becomes a lot easier to put it out there and manifest it. And one of the best ways to get over that fear is by telling a friend or a family member something that you've been thinking about wanting to start. And so I would say also to anyone on the call today that if you have a student or someone else that approaches you, that they have something that they're passionate about or have been wanting to try, what a great way to support this entrepreneurial spirit by encouraging them or connecting them with resources. So at Marquette, I often find it's the students themselves that maybe hold themselves back from wanting to try something. One of the cool things that we have for students now is we have funding. So if funding is I can't do this because I don't have money. As a student, you can get free resources, and it's no equity. It's an investment in you to try something. We have pitch programs. We have mentors to help support that. So if you are the barrier, my best advice is to think about putting it out there and just talking to someone, because I don't want anyone to look back at the end of the day and miss out on opportunities to grow their mindset, because it's something, whether you become an entrepreneur and go down that path like Destiny or something else, what a great asset and gift to give to yourself.
Can I just say, adding to that, so how I started in 2014 studying and just doing things? Well, in those 2 years, I like talked my friends' ears off. Alan, like my parents, said, this is what I want to do. And like, they're like, yeah. Like, in the whole 2 years. And like, I was just like constantly kind of, also getting like feedback from people that I respected, like, would you buy this pillow? Would you buy this? Would you add this table runner? Would you so, yeah, just really, not worrying about like if you sound like a crazy person, because like these are your ideas, and and people were actually like they liked listening to that, and so it was and also the adding to the whole thing about when you see entrepreneurs, they're not like you said, like I'm not people are like, oh, you're a superwoman. And really, like I have so much help, like my husband and my kids and my dad and like just friends who are, if I need to vent or I have to say, like I sent a lot of photos to magazines and had so many no's, like people, nope, sorry, just not at this time, we're going in this direction for this fall, blah blah blah. But I did have a couple of yeses that made a big difference to me. And so, I'd say like if I sent out, I remember there was like over 20 emails I sent to different editors, and I got into one magazine, and I was like, yes, like it was just a little thing on me. But I remember being in the airport and then opening the magazine and seeing it and be like, whoa, yeah, like dancing around an airport looking crazy. But I was like, oh my God, like this is awesome. And then, so it's been a few magazines now, and I just feel like the nice thing about that, I think what makes me feel good is that other Indigenous designers, and just not even non-Indigenous people, like sending messages. I saw you in this magazine. It just made me feel so happy, and that someone from Winnipeg did this, or like I saw one of our own in this magazine, like seeing another Indigenous person. So I like things like that really make me realize like it is important that we see ourselves out there. Like when I was in architecture studying, I didn't see any Indigenous designers in magazines. And even now, like it's very rare to see a person of color in some of these like mainstream media, like designers. So like when I do see one, it's really nice when you see that diversity. But even more like Indigenous like representation is it's not there. So we need more of that, and we definitely need more Indigenous designers. And because when I was in school, there was so much racism, from my classmates and even from professors. Like I gotta say, and they didn't want to take a stand, to kind of stick up for when someone puts you in a awkward position. I didn't feel supported. So I was expected to be an expert on everything Indigenous, and I'm not. I'm still learning. So stuff like that was really really bothered me. But now, like the Indigenous design students at the U of M, oh my gosh, they're amazing. Like I can't get over how I don't know, just all the presentations they do, the things like they put out there, the student organization there is like they are superstars. Like and so I try to go to their events as much as I can, because I just remember like the long nights, like any student, like in grad studies, anything, like it's tough. Like it's a tough few years until you get out there. But
oh my gosh, well we have we could just keep going, but I'm gonna make sure I catch Chris Jusky's question, maybe in just the few minutes that we have. He asks, and Chris, if you would like to ask it yourself, you can. Otherwise, I'm happy to ask, is there a
Sure.
new? Oh,
go ahead, Jacqueline.
you go ahead, Chris.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I was just wondering. I'm assuming that your customer base includes um, white people as well as as well as First Nations people, and I was curious if there's difference in the feedback you get or the interactions you have with Native and non-Native customers, and if there's a key educational message that you hope to convey, either historically or culturally through the patterns and designs that you make.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Yeah, so I definitely get a range of reactions at pop-ups. Sometimes I'll get young girls coming and saying, "Oh, your products are so cute. Aren't you a cutie?" Things like that. And it doesn't feel the greatest. And then you get others that really want to know the history. And then you get, I don't know, it's just been, I would say 80% positive. Let me just put it that way. 20% was kind of funny reactions. They weren't sure what to do. Yeah. But majority there's positive. And I would say the textiles have been kind of like a teaching tool. It does get people talking. I feel like it's been quite the conversation starter when people come up to the booth and see the products. I gotta say, I went to a pop-up in Las Vegas, and it was at Native American Gaming Association conference, and there was a tiny portion in the whole, I guess, trade show that was for arts and crafts. And so I was in the arts and crafts area. The rest of the floor was all this trade show booth stuff. So there was a lot of Navajo artists, and it was like Navajo, 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 Anishinaabe, me, Navajo. And so it was, yeah, there's all this beautiful art and stuff. And then boom, like I set up like pillows, and I had the napkins out, and I had my quilts that I make. And so I had a lot of people come up to me, like Indigenous people, because it was an Indigenous conference. And majority, again, was positive. But there was a lot of people, Indigenous people, that said, "Boy, you Canadians love napkins. Like, is this what you use all the time?" Like, there was just like they were joking that they only do this to wipe their hands, or they, wipe on their, so there's lots of joking. But I would say, yeah, and I just told them, a lot of times people use the napkins. I've had people email me, they frame them too. They would frame them and it'd be part of a gallery wall. Or they kind of put them all on the table, so that you get 4 in a set, and then you'd put all your dishes on that, so you kind of dress up the table that way. Or you can definitely use them as napkins. But so it always ranges, but most of the time it's very positive. Yeah. I also brought my dad to pop-ups. I don't do that anymore because he gives people the stink eye if they don't buy anything, and you'll see this old guy in the background staring at you. So I had to send him away. But yeah, so it's been pretty good.
Oh, Uncle Baldy, thank you for sharing that story. Well, I can just tell you that there would be 100% positive feedback here. So I'll start with it, and then maybe maybe Amanda or Kelsey or Alex can pop in and just offer their thanks again too.
One more thing, I did send Amanda a link to the presentation slides.
Oh,
so
great.
Yeah, but if you wanted to, share that with whatever, it's just kind of like an evolving, when I first started, because I did architecture. So the first images are a daycare, an Indigenous daycare I was working on, and then a school, and then the drum stools. And there's an image of my daughter. She made a construction paper napkin with some of my patterns that she likes. So my kids are it just kind of shows them involved. My husband, I think there's a picture of my husband taking photos of when we're styling the products.
Yes.
And so it just kind of goes through those kind of things. Yeah.
They're beautiful. I'm sorry I couldn't share my screen.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. Kelsey and Destiny, this was just like a fabulous duo. And I was just saying to Kelsey, we should have you in the hub in her space next year when this all settles down. But for now, just gracious thanks to Amanda, who really helped support this event. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Destiny and Kelsey, for speaking. I just wanted to add that we won't be having a Soup with Substance event next week, but we'll have one the following week on December 2nd.
Great, thank you. And Kelly will answer there's a last question in the chat. We'll certainly answer that. I put the link in the chat to Indigo Arrows, but I will follow up with folks that were here to share other materials too. Great.
Great, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks so much.
Destiny. Thanks, Jacqueline. Thanks, Linda.
Thanks, Kelsey. Thanks, everyone. And
Puppy says hi
You
too.
guys.
Okay.